Nostalgia for the past has political ramifications. It seems in the Anglosphere, those who fashion themselves as traditionalists or conservatives find themselves under heavy criticism for idealizing a past which doesn't exist or looking back as opposed to forward. The future, according to some progressives familiar with Whig historiography, sees humanity marching towards a brighter, more prosperous future, as seen by Steven Pinker and numerous classical liberals. Liberalism, as an ideology shaping the West, gains legitimacy by asserting its moral superiority over the pre-modern systems of the past. Those nostalgic for the past, especially the Middle Ages or the Renaissance times, are frequently challenged by both progressives and liberals, and here I would like to challenge that. In this video, I will articulate why nostalgia is actually a positive force in both politics and culture, and in addition, helps us build a better future. You'll hear about artists, priests, muses, monarchs, and the everyday men and women like you and me. Nostalgia here is the sentimental yearning for the past, whether it is ancient, medieval, or modern. Let's begin. I'm Madeleine Rose-Jones, and I study history, literature, and culture. Welcome to Snowy Fictions. First, it is completely normal and human to have nostalgia for the past. Heck, throughout history, we have numerous examples of individuals and groups looking back for inspiration. The Byzantine princess and historian Anna Komnene did not just merely write about the Crusades and her father. She was engaged with Greek history as a whole, taking stylish cues from both Homer and Herodotus. She wasn't wrong in doing this. As a woman from the Eastern Roman Empire, we exist among a certain cultural framework. The Byzantines saw themselves as a continuation of the Roman Empire. I cannot help but notice a lot of the moral navel-gazing and commentary about sentimentality towards the past is a manipulative way to portray humanity as historyless, without a past and a heritage. This is not a good way to structure your identity or that of others, and speaks to the ingratitude many have towards previous generations. In my studies, I encountered many examples of cultural vandalism and ingratitude towards the past, such as the French Revolution, iconoclasm in Byzantium, the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and of course, the Islamic State. These vandals hated the past, hated history, and hated heritage. A grotesque example comes from Soviet Russia, where Russian Orthodox cathedrals and churches were hollowed out and turned into atheistic museums, as shown in Kazan Cathedral in St. Petersburg. Previous heroes, tsars, and writers in Russia were now villainized and treated as superstitious and backward. Their crime was ultimately not submitting to the demands of the present. To clarify, I am not saying the past was perfect and that how we think about history is above criticism or debate. I do not think that. And a vast majority of those nostalgic for the past or previous civilizations do not either. But those who say the past has to be idyllic, progressive, and perfect for us to take inspiration and direction from it are peculiar to me. But who says the past has to be idyllic, progressive, and perfect for us to take inspiration from it? I cannot help but think we are constantly hit over the head about how terrible the past was. We have horrible histories, the movie Pleasantville, and the recent blockbuster Lessons in Chemistry to endlessly lecture us about the so-called terrible past. If you are into vintage clothing or fashion, there is a saying called vintage clothing, not vintage values. But this is highly frustrating because there is so much wisdom and knowledge in the past. You don't have to agree with everything said or done to understand the value the past has. We must stop the smug, false sense of superiority we have to those who came before us. Because I've seen modern civilization, and yeah, we are not so much better. We'd benefit from having the humility to accept our connections to the past, as well as our yearning for it, as opposed to cutting ourselves from it. In the case of Britain, it's not uncommon for some to promote uncomfortable histories and decolonising the classroom. We have seen this with recent non-fiction about the British Empire, which take a very, very negative view. It's true, the British Empire is never above criticism or debate, but I cannot help but notice that many in the professional media class are simply bothered by the British taking any pride in their heritage or past. The idea you have to deconstruct your nostalgia endlessly is ridiculous. Also, I have encountered many British individuals who do yearn for the good old days, and to be honest, I do not blame them. The United Kingdom is deeply flawed right now in terms of living standards, salaries, industrialisation, and social cohesion. Understanding that it wasn't always like that is helpful in understanding that it always doesn't have to be like that. Nostalgia can motivate change. Humanity doesn't benefit from ignoring their own nostalgia, as such denialism weakens us. This brings us to the ultimate point I want to make about having nostalgia can help us build a better future. Early in the 19th century, ideas about Greco-Roman history, Byzantium, and the ancient Near East led to various campaigns for Greek independence, but also scholarship about antiquity. This was fueled by nationalism, sentimentality, curiosity, and romanticism. This led to not only stunning works of art, such as the Sacré-Cœur in Paris or St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, but also greater knowledge and awareness about the past. So often, it's the nostalgic and sentimental types who have a deep love for history and pursue long-term scholarship. But also, nostalgia can be a form of stability. France may pride itself on having a liberal republic, but after the Notre-Dame de Paris fire in 2019, it was clear many saw the cathedral as part of their identity as Parisians and French men and women. This stability is so often the foundations of building something great. The Italian Renaissance is a favourite example of mine. Whilst many of the old masters seemed forward-thinking and progressive at the time, there is a deep connection they had with Greco-Roman history, the papacy, the established guilds, and elite families. There is no reason why nostalgic individuals cannot also be forward-thinking. Lastly, I must mention the role nostalgia plays in art and architecture. It's no secret. Much of the new builds in the Anglosphere, especially in my city, Sydney, Australia, is very hideous. It seems the taxpayer is forced to fund revolting and drab buildings. That's why I've taken solace in traditional architecture movements, the writings of Roger Scruton, and research about new classical buildings across the West. I'm also fond of those Twitter accounts like Culture Critic and the Cultural Tutor, which aim to increase general awareness about art and beauty. They aren't perfect, of course, but I value these accounts and the stance they have taken. It is okay to have nostalgia for the past, to find certain things better, and to take inspiration from previous eras. That doesn't make you backwards or out of touch. Rather, it makes you an individual attuned with history and heritage. There is no reason why you can't use this to build a worthy future. This was a short video explaining a few benefits of nostalgia. There's certainly a grim picture painted in popular media and culture, and I felt I needed to counteract it by highlighting the many uses and positives of nostalgia. For myself, nostalgia is a very human thing and is utterly normal. There are places and times which I don't necessarily idolize, but I have a yearning for and take inspiration from, like the Victorian times, the High Middle Ages, and Imperial Vienna. Interpreting this to mean I am out of touch with the present and unfamiliar with the nuances of history is simply unfair. But returning to you, what historical eras do you like to read about? Comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts and start a discussion. Also, please consider subscribing for frequent videos on history, literature and culture. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.